Welcome to the Don't Stop the Education series presented by Sennheiser Sound Academy. My name's Tim Moore, and I'm here with my fellow member of the relationship management team at Sennheiser, Andy Egerton, who is my co-host today.
Hey everyone.
Welcome, Andy. Today we'll be talking about independent artists and are happy to have invited some of our favorite people that we work with. And we have two from the UK and two from here in Nashville. In the UK, we have Frank Turner and Jess Guise. Hey, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
In Nashville, we have Katie Cole and Tom Wurth.
Hey, hey.
And
What's going on?
thank you guys for joining us.
You're welcome.
We're really happy to have you. Yeah. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andy to kick this thing off.
Thank you, Tim. Again, yes, thank you all for joining. This webinar's mainly designed around live streaming and how artists have kind of adapted to what's going on in the world at the moment. But first, we'd just like to if you could all take 3 or 4 minutes just to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your career. And I guess we'll start in the UK and we'll go to Frank and Jess first, please.
Shall I go first?
Yeah, you go first.
I grew up playing in punk rock bands when I was younger. In 2005, the last one of those that I was in broke up, and I decided to set off on my own with an acoustic guitar and a backpack full of clothes, and just started playing a lot of shows. And that's always been the kind of bedrock of my career, has been touring, which obviously makes everything that's happening right now all the more galling. But basically, yeah, in the intervening 15 years, I've played about 2,500 shows around the world. I've released 8 studio albums, and I have a band who I play with on normal occasions as well, although obviously not right now because we don't live together, and we're locked down in the UK. Yeah, I've done a lot of touring all around the world, opening for other bands, headlining obviously festivals, whatever else it might be, and picking up friends along the way. And now I was actually in the middle of a tour when lockdown kicked in, and here we are stuck at home in London. And that's the very short version of my career.
It is very short. I have a very different backstory. I actually was a theatre actor for the last 10 years. That's what I did until about a year ago, which I loved, which also doesn't translate very well to Zoom. So most of my friends from that walk of life are struggling at the moment as well. But I have always been a songwriter. I have always written songs. I was for quite a long time just too scared to do it. It's really scary. And then we got married last year, and we did a few shows before then where I supported you. I've had a band since me and my band have been playing together since about 2015, but we all work in theatre, so it had all been pretty sporadic. And then we did a few shows last year, and this is the year that I decided, right, you know what, I want to do music. Music is the thing. Let's build that. Let's go with that. I chose really well.
Yeah.
So,
Brilliant timing.
of all the times to be like, yeah, what's the worst that could happen? This is my music industry year. Yeah, so it's been really interesting. It means that I haven't been able to do as much with my band as I would have wanted to do because we're not together. We released our first proper release came out this year in March. Then we were on tour together.
Yeah, when
the pandemic kicked in, and so we came home together as well because we do live together, which is fortunate. So since then we have done a lot of streams.
Yeah, a lot of streaming.
So it's been a very large part of our life since then. So that's sort of how I tumbled into the streaming world.
Yeah.
Fantastic, thank you. Oh yeah, it's such an unfortunate time, I guess, but it's...
And it was all going so well.
It took me such a long time to be brave enough, you know. And I was like, "Come on, Jessica, this is what's the worst that can happen?" And here we are. But it was going really well, and it continues. People are lovely, you know.
And it will. It'll pick back up. We'll be back to normal soon. Katie, let's jump across to you, please.
Well, I'm Australian. I live in Nashville, and I started out much like Frank, I suppose, doing I did a lot of pubs, clubs. I played, 5, 6, 7 nights a week for almost 10 years before I moved to America. Moved to America to then gain some exposure in the UK on BBC Radio 2, and of course that makes sense. Being from Australia, moving to America, and then having that connection click. But I'm an Americana artist, so I ended up having some good successes opening and recording with legends like Glenn Campbell and Chris Christopherson appeared on one of my records, and of course started to hear word of Nashville, because I've always been a songwriter, written for artists around the world in pretty much every genre except metal.
But there's still time.
But you know, rock, country, EDM, dance. I've had cuts with artists all over the shop. But it was really when I moved to America that things really started to sort of kick in for me as an artist, and having some exposure, started to do a lot more shows, then moved to Nashville. And my side hustle is also being a musician in the Smashing Pumpkins, which is a very, very successful alternative rock band. And although that doesn't correlate directly with my Americana genre, I've gained so much exposure, and fans have connected with me through that for really the last 4 years. I really did my first tour, no, 5 years. I did my first tour with them in 2015. And that sort of became an opening for the band, and then it became opening for the band and playing bass, then another tour playing bass, and then I transitioned to keys, and I've played now arena shows, and I've done the bucket list thing of, I never thought I'd be able to do these things, but I've now, you know, played Madison Square Garden and played Wembley and played all these places all across the world. And now being in lockdown, I actually had my first stadium tour with the Pumpkins was locked in for this year to be touring with Guns N' Roses. And I was going to be like, another bucket list check for me. And, you know, I mean, I've had so many fortunate things happen to me, but being in lockdown now, obviously transitioning to a more streaming mode has been the focus. I've always been pretty tech savvy and been, you know, building my socials, building YouTube, building all these things all at the same time, because you kind of have to. But now I'm glad that I had been, because doing a more social and online approach to things has just been a little geared up now. And it's been a really good experience for me so far. I haven't done tons of online shows. I've been a bit more strategic to build an audience to then focus on a show, but it's been really good.
Fantastic, thank you. Great in-depth there. Tom, last but not least.
Yeah, man. Well, I originally grew up in Northwest Iowa, but I moved to Nashville. I've been in Nashville since 1994. And don't I look good for 25? Say yes. It's easier if you say yes.
Fantastic.
I moved to Nashville, and I actually graduated high school, and I enrolled at Belmont University, and I was in the music business program. A couple guys you might recognize is Chad Jeffers. He's a buddy of mine. He plays for Carrie Underwood. Of course, Brad Paisley was my classmate at the time, and that was kind of an interesting deal. But I've spent a lot of my time performing and writing songs as well. I spent 3 years writing for BMG Music Publishing here in Nashville, which kind of led me to some other artists cutting some of my songs, which was fantastic. And eventually I ended up getting a Grammy nomination for a children's album, believe it or not, which was a lot of fun. That was my experience. I didn't have the exact same experience that Katie did at Madison Square Gardens, but I was there. I was there, and I during the Grammys, and it was pretty incredible. I've spent a lot of time on the road. I'm kind of that old school guy. I really, really love the interaction with the audience. I like to pull them in and make them a part of the show. And it was, I guess, March 15th. I was doing a show with John Ford Coley from England, Dan and John Ford Coley. And if you don't remember the name John Ford Coley, you'll probably remember the song I'd Really Love to See You Tonight. Those guys had a lot of hits in the 70s and early 80s. And Billy Dean. And we were actually doing a show. We're doing a show called Bridges and Backroads. And we were the very last thing at the Island View Casino there in Gulfport, Mississippi. And it was kind of crazy. We did that show, and it was like on the way home, everything started shutting down. And, you know, for a guy who's stays out on the road a good bit and writes. It was a little bit scary. I'm sure I'm probably share that sentiment with a lot of people. And it took me a minute to digest that. It took me a little while to digest that. But I kind of went, head first into the streaming thing, and I spent about a month. I felt like I went back to college. And I spent like a month really researching and putting my thing together for the Facebook Live stuff. And I'll tell you what's been interesting for me is I still try and have that, even though you're singing to the back of your iPhone, I still try and like to see if I can't pull off some of that interaction. So, and usually that happens in my mind where I can ask people to sing along, and I can maybe see a few of them, go into the refrigerator and getting a Coke and sing along to the song. So that's kind of how I do it. But what's been interesting to me is it's been a really cool experience for me. I've gotten a lot of folks emailing me and contacting me, and I don't know about you guys, but I did not expect what I'm seeing. So actually, I think this is now, I've kind of adopted this as part of not just something I'm going to do for the pandemic, but part of becoming part of my career. Because I kind of like going to work, and the great thing about streaming is you only have to dress from the waist up. You can be wearing flip-flops and shorts. So that's kind of where I'm at.
I've been in sweatpants for 9 weeks now.
All right.
I'm kind of comfortable with it.
Careful, Tom. That's
it's
been
not bad.
a couple of news people have been caught in that situation.
Sorry, Jess. What was that?
I was just saying that our friends now call jeans hard trousers. So you got trousers.
I like it.
Hard trousers.
That's great.
Well, why did I ever wear hard trousers?
I think it is, but it's totally right, Tom, what you're saying. Certainly with what me and Tim doing the artist relations, and I'm not long out of touring myself, only a year. I was on the road for sort of 15 years kind of thing, and just seeing the industry and a lot of my friends go from 100% to zero overnight is tricky. So when I'll go to Frank and Jess, when did you decide, when the pandemic started, that you were going to start streaming? And because you reacted pretty quick to it, I remember Frank's were one of the first ones up that I saw online.
Well, I think we thought that there would be benefit in that anyway, because it seemed pretty obvious that everybody was going to get into the streaming world, and that's legit. But trying to be ahead of that curve. We were on tour at the time. It was the two of us playing, and then a songwriter called Micah Schnabel, who's a friend of ours from Ohio, and his partner Vanessa was on the tour with us as well. So there were the four of us, and because they're from the States, we all came back here to our house in London, and we sort of had a day to gather ourselves, and then it was like, well, why don't we just do the stream tomorrow?
Yeah. I mean, it was actually before lockdown hit in this country anyway. It was just that shows had been called off.
Yeah,
so we came home, and obviously immediately we came home in the middle of the tour. So there were a lot of people that just lost their, and you had several tours ahead cancelled. So it was more about what we knew at that stage, being that the crew were going to be off the road for quite a long time.
So we decided there's 11 people who make a full-time living with me on the road, and I decided to do a fundraiser for those guys, because they're all, I as a songwriter and as an artist, I have income streams from things like merchandise and publishing and that sort of thing, which is going to pay the rent and keep the lights on. But my tour manager and my production manager and all these kind of people were immediately, it seemed to me that they were looking at a harder situation. So we just decided we had to cancel 5 shows from the tour, and we decided to just do the set that we would have done at any one of those 5 shows on Facebook Live, and set it up in the front room downstairs. And that first one was kind of insane.
That was amazing.
We had we were averaging about 12,000 viewers at any given point, and the fundraiser raised like £45,000, which was insane. So so we
those guys a lot.
So I split the money up and paid 11 people a good couple of months' salary, and that felt like a really positive use of my time. That was the beginning of it for us. Obviously, since then we've gone on to like turn it into a weekly regular thing with a slightly different angle on it, which is that I'm doing fundraisers for independent venues, which is a world that I do a lot of work in normal times anyway, because running small independent venues is tough even when there isn't a global pandemic going on. So we've done like one a week of those for the last 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And that,
and they're weekly, they're always on a Thursday now, which wasn't necessarily something we planned, but it worked out really well.
Yeah, definitely. It's sort of become a bit of a marker both in the audience's week and indeed mine. I mean, I think the reason that we know what day of the week it is because how far away we are from a stream on either side.
How severe is the hangover?
Yeah, totally. And I've been playing through my albums one by one and sort of doing rarities weeks. I'm going to do some covers weeks and this kind of thing, which to be honest is a case of me trying to stretch out my material so I'm not repeating myself. And the audience has definitely dropped off from where it was initially, and it's down to sort of an average of about sort of 4,000 to 5,000 a week now. But like that, it's since hitting that level, it's stayed pretty steady there, and the fundraising amount has stayed pretty steady, which I've been kind of impressed by because I figured that it would be a constant downward spiral, particularly as other people start live streaming and as people get bored of seeing me sitting in my sitting room with an acoustic guitar, because that's the thing about touring. You're in a different place every day. The audience is different every day. It doesn't matter if you do the same thing. You're interacting with a different group of people. If it's a live stream thing, there may well be a lot of people. In fact, I know there are a lot of people who tune in every week. So I've been trying to think of ways of keeping it interesting, both for me and for them. But it's turned into a pretty cool thing, and I have another one of them on Thursday, and the following Thursday, and on into however long this is going to last for.
Just going to run out of albums, though.
I am going to run out of albums at some point. But I'm hoping that by that point we might be at a stage where like two households can gather, in which case I want to kind of get either members of my band or songwriters I'm friends with or whatever to come over and, you know, introduce a variance on that level. But I guess like everybody, we're just sort of playing it by ear at this point.
Yeah.
No one, I think one of the things I find interesting is at the beginning, like we were all like, well, this might be 3 weeks, you know? And now as we enter week 900,000, it's kind of like no one really seems to know like when this is going to wrap up. So I think everybody's kind of expectations and predictions and the way you calibrate yourself has sort of changed as time has gone on, as this has expanded, certainly here in England.
Yeah, totally agree. And are you with Jess, are you doing it together, or do you play a bit of your stuff and then?
Well, I do some support sets for Frank. Sometimes I've done some streams of my own as well, which are smaller, but they have been wonderful. But I quite often do the support set because there's no else here. So it's always the same support if there's the support.
How to get a support slot, move in with the headliner.
Yeah, exactly. So I will do that, but also I run quite a lot of the behind the scenes. I do harmonies and harmonica solos and stuff that if people want them.
And applause.
And also, I've got really good at clapping loudly.
But I mean, that is
it's a thing. It is a thing. And it's sort of what I really, really love about your live streams is that. So I will respond to the comments. I'll chat to people as they chat to us, and I think one of the things people really love about it, because you have there's a massive community feel in Frank's fan base anyway. It's like this enormous family of people that have sort of shared values and are really decent to each other. And it's nice to see that on the internet, because that's quite unusual on the internet, I think. People being nice to each other. And I think people like that it feels that interactive. And it's like, feels like they can ask me something and it might get through to him and we can sort of have a natter. And so that's a lot of the time. So I do play, definitely, but I'm always there because I'm kind of running. He's singing and I'm doing everything else.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you. And thanks for the fundraising for your crew. What a great thing to do for them. Supporting
I would say is that I feel like it's coming up to the point where I'm going to do another one because it's been the amount of time that I thought that the lockdown was
it'd be great for the small venues as well, because they're really struggling. I'm seeing a lot of that. How was it for you, Katie? When did you decide to sort of start streaming? And
well, I did my last official gig on the 13th of March. I just had to scroll through my calendar to go, what year is it? What month is it? You know how it is. And looked and saw that my first official one, I remember being not hesitant to stream right away, but just watching what people were doing first. a bit strategic as an artist as it is. I like to make sure I know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it, and don't just jump in and kind of mess it all up. But I watched what people were doing, and I watched like everyone going live on Facebook and then everyone going live on Instagram. And I just thought, what a unusual, complicated, and competitive field social media is, and the distraction level of wanting to change the channel, so to speak. You're competing with everyone else going live at the same time, and your fans may stick around and watch your entire show, but being on any of those social platforms, I started to sort of gauge that the distraction was pretty intense. So I opted to do my first online official show on Stage It, which is a website, for, I think I did $1 tickets or whatever, on the 21st. So it was just over a week after I had my last gig on the 21st of March. And I had a bunch of people from around the world, and obviously navigating time zones, because I have fans in Europe, I have fans in America, and fans in Australia. So then you have to do the math divided by pi, the square root of 10, to get the right time zone that everyone can kind of tune in, and that's complicated. But did my first one, had a bunch of people show up, contribute, and tip as well, which I was just like really blown away by the generosity and kindness of people showing up. I just wanted to do a show and just see what would happen. But I liked the platform in the sense that you're not given those other distractions. You're there specifically to watch that show, and you're going to sit through it. And there's also like a chat window, and you can see all the fans communicate, chat with each other. You can comment during the show as well. And it's not like when you do an Instagram live, you've got the feed going up and then you're having to like put your face right up near the camera to read comments and get all super weird with people. Facebook's a little bit more friendly to reading comments and having interaction, but I just found the competition was a bit great. So I went to that platform, and I've been doing them roughly every 3 weeks. And I like Frank in a sense too, I've been sort of changing up. So I'm not just doing my songs and wearing those out. I sort of started to do a bit more of I did a Katie Cole by request only, and you can only request the songs via that particular chat wall on Stage It. And then I went to, did I go to 80s? I started doing theme sort of requests. So on movie songs I did first, and then I did
Brilliant.
80s, and the next one coming up is 90s and grunge. And still playing some of my songs, but just so it's not the same. I don't want to wear out my audience. I know they're bored. I know they've got every other place that they could possibly be during that window, and they're choosing to spend it with me. And I see that as there's a responsibility there. They're ticket holders, so to speak. And you kind of want to give them something that is worthy of their time, so that they'll have a good experience, tell other people, and come back. But I jumped in pretty quick, but was a little cautious and got my toes, just dipped my toes in first, just to see what the water was like. And I feel good about the choices that I've made. I've done other streamings on other platforms. I did an Instagram one for Sennheiser. I did a Facebook one for a festival, like a folk festival. And like, I'm happy to go wherever there are people that want to show. I just try to be a little bit more strategic about the ones I plan, so I don't wear out my audience.
Yeah, fantastic. And now, finally, I'll go to Tom, and obviously Jess and Frank and Katie as well. They've both sort of mentioned a little bit how they've adapted their set and the songs that they've chosen to play on there. So if you could just sort of tell us how quickly you sort of moved to doing streams, and why you did, and how you decide what content you're going to play, or set list, not content, but which songs are you going to play to your stream?
Well, for me, I was a lot like Katie. I didn't. I kind of like to. I think anything worth doing is worth overdoing. so I kind of wanted to do my research, and I kind of wanted to see. I had some other artist friends that were doing some streaming, and they kind of like jumped right in. And I'm not really that guy, because I also do some production stuff. And, with all of that, there's a lot of planning to go along with that. And I didn't want to look like a goofball, to the whole world, and get out there and just start turning on my phone. And as far as I do a lot of acoustic stuff, or I have been the last couple of years anyway. And I've kind of, as the singer-songwriter artist, I've kind of enjoyed that, because there's such a purity, I think, in the creation of, I mean, that's as pure as it can be, whether it be piano or guitar or whatever you play. But the artist and one instrument, and I've always looked up to those guys that could do that, and tried to emulate that in my career. But and as far as a set list, I hardly ever have. I might have like the first 3 songs deep. After that, I go off, especially when I'm out actually live. I really just try to read the room. I mean, I have an arsenal of material that I can draw from, but depending on what the mood is, now it is a little bit different with the streaming because, like I said, you're looking at the back of your phone or a camera or something like that. But I think one of the benefits to being creative is I've got a pretty active imagination, and I hope I'm coming across, and I hope that I'm trying to make some communicate with my audience. And I will say this: I've actually had a lot of fun doing this. It was supposed to be just a Facebook Live thing, and just to try it out. And now I have people say, "I can't wait till Wednesday and watch the show." You know. So, did I go away?
You did.
Somebody else was calling me. Anyway, don't you love technology? But yeah, it was. I've actually enjoyed this, and it's given me a different perspective, and I think that might even be changing the way that I'm writing and recording and going after the new stuff. So stuff like this. I mean, like my folks live up in Iowa. We now do FaceTime and stuff like that. So that's kind of the only way they can see I've got 2 sons, and it's the only way they can kind of see the grandkids. So it's been interesting.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. And has anyone faced any curveballs of any fans saying, "Oh, can you play that 2005 B-side from a limited release that you put out 100 copies," anything like that? Little surprises?
I've been trying to go through all my recorded material systematically to try and put the request issue to one side, because otherwise it would probably get irritating.
It's the one time in your career that you're not really taking requests,
so
actually,
I am going.
So.
I'm at the moment going through everything, but it's kind of funny because every week, generally on about Wednesday, I go, "Oh my god, I've got to play that one tomorrow," and start like printing off lyric sheets and stuff, because I've written a lot of songs and like trying to remember chords and stuff, and also the whole thing of negotiating playing solo, because some of my material, all my material is written solo, but a lot of it is sort of then grows into full band arrangements, and reminding myself how to get back to playing it when it's just me can be an interesting challenge week on week. Something I wanted to pick up on just on what the other guys were saying, though, is that one of the things I have found very interesting about this is that, like, because the internet is universally international by definition, that's weirdly restrictive in practice, because, and I sort of mentioned this earlier, but I wanted to highlight it, like when you're on tour, like you're in Columbus tonight, or you're in Berlin, or wherever you are, and you have the people from that city and you're playing to them, and then the next night you're in Madrid or wherever and you're playing to those people, and the fact that the audience is kind of geographically restricted actually sort of expands it in a funny way. Whereas when you're on the internet, it's like anyone in the world can tune in every week. And it's I don't know, it's quite weird. It's sort of almost limiting in a strange way because it's universal.
I think it's what I find interesting about set lists, what people have been saying about that in direct opposition to what you normally say, because you've obviously taught me through this quite a lot over the last year or so, that like if you find a set list that really works, and there is a certain magic, especially if you've got a full band and so on and so forth, to finding a list that really works. And I'm sure, Tom, even if you're going with the flow, some nights you'd be like, "Oh yeah, brilliant," and sometimes you'd be like, "Oh damn it, I should have done that one first," or whatever. So sometimes there's a set list that just really works, I mean, it's not that you do the same thing every day,
No,
but you don't necessarily change the show just because every night, because you're playing to a different audience.
Right.
And if you're a couple of hardcore fans that travel to watch it, that's wonderful, but they wouldn't even, I mean, coming from the theatre, we do the same show every day, so you wouldn't expect it necessarily to be completely different. Whereas on a live stream,
because
you
can't, a lot of the same
you can't
people.
repeat the same stuff, so you can't like, perfect the live stream set list and then keep doing it. That's just not an option, which is an option in the live world. So that's been quite different, I think.
That's a great point. Yeah, I'm going to hand back over to Tim now. Just before I do that, though, I would like to say any participants, there's a Q&A box down there. If you want to fire the questions across, we'll be sure to ask them. But for now, over to Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. So just to real quick, this did come on everyone kind of out of the blue that we were going to the streaming, and we discussed how we approach streaming. Katie, I'll go to you on this first. I know you already regularly put out quite a few videos on your channels of different songs and acoustic performances and things of that nature, but as it came up and things shut down immediately, how prepared were you equipment-wise, both video and audio, to go towards the streaming factor? I mean, did you have to make a lot of changes? And with the lockdown going on, how were you able to find what you needed if you didn't have it? Just kind of curious what your approach was.
I had everything already. I already had a USB mic. The only thing that I did purchase was, if anyone knows what this is, it's a connector cable. That's the only thing I purchased for to use for my phone, so I could plug a USB mic into that if I wanted to do Instagram Live, which I don't really do, just because again it's that competition thing. But like I was pretty much ready to go from the get-go, so that when we had the lockdown, I was like, okay, well, let me just set it up, test it. I already had the gear. I'm pretty tech savvy. It was more like, what am I going to do? It wasn't the how am I going to do it. It was what am I going to do? How am I going to keep the audience sort of interested? And like Frank and Jess have said as well, like none of us knew that this would still be happening. It was just like jump in and try. And then like we're creative people, and the idea of being creative is when you're given a set of circumstances is create a way out of it or create something, create a distraction, create something out of nothing. That's kind of what we do. So once I worked out, okay, well, I can stream, and then it was like, what else am I going to do? And then I went to, well, if I do this all by requests, this is going to drive an interest and intrigue from fans. But no, in terms of gear, I was set up.
Okay. How about you, Tom?
I also had to get the little Lightning to USB 3 camera adapter, for the iPhone. But I had, because I also have a little overdub studio here at the house, I had most of it. I think for me, it was just getting on and learning about different software, how this stuff works. I mean, Facebook does a pretty good job of making it fairly easy. But I still wanted to do just, I'm for my audiences and stuff, I'm always trying to do a little bit more. And as far as like Katie and Frank were talking about with the set list stuff, what's been interesting to me is, as an artist, I think it's been a fantastic challenge to us as musicians and artists to push ourselves and go back in some of our back catalog, bring some of that kind of stuff out. And it's been incredible to me to see the reaction, that you might have a song that was 10 years old and you haven't played it in a while, and then you play it and people are, going crazy for it. So, but as far as like being all set up, I think my thing was more of the time I spent preparing just to do the first one. And I got to tell you what, 3 minutes before 7 o'clock, the whole thing crashed 3 minutes beforehand. And I'll tell you what, I've never been more panicked in my life, and trying to get all that stuff back up. And then, and that was the first broadcast. So I thought, well, I guess I need to learn a little bit more, so it goes smoother. So now I'm kind of feeling like the more that I do it, the more comfortable I'm getting. I'm hoping that's coming across in the show. But I know I'm not feeling as anxious during the whole process.
Good, good. How about you guys, Frank and Jess?
Well, so we sort of took the decision to try and keep things as technically simple as possible. I mean, I'm a medium tech head, I'd say, but like
We've got quite a lot of kit.
yeah,
Yeah.
but I often find that the more things you put in your chain, the more things there are to go wrong. You know what I mean? And if
Yes.
possible, keep things as simple as possible. We've had some issues with our streaming, which I think has as much to do with our internet service provider as anything else. Which the quality
It's
of
the one
which,
thing we can't really do masses about.
yeah, and the very first one we did, the quality was great. The signal was great. Everything was absolutely great. And people were sort of commenting saying, "Wow, this looks great. Sounds great." And I sort of thought to myself, "Great, we've got it. That's the format works." And then over the next few weeks, absolutely plummeted, and we did have one week in particular where things were really glitchy in terms of the feed. But it wasn't so much about the audio equipment at this end. It was about getting it to the internet, wherever the internet is.
Yeah.
And that was really frustrating for a little while. And we did stuff like sort of got like a hardwired Ethernet cable in for the laptop, and then I've switched from using my laptop to using my phone, because generally iPhones tend to have like decent enough, if not better, cameras and microphones in them quite a lot of the time.
We have also switched platforms.
Yeah, we moved. At the beginning we did everything on Facebook Live, and we've moved over to YouTube Live now. Because one of the main reasons for that actually is that I think the Stage platform is a really good one, a really interesting one, and that is certainly something I'm kind of looking into. But for the benefit shows that I'm doing, my kind of idea is that they're free to come to. You don't have to pay to be there, but if you are there, then I then harangue people to throw money in the bucket, and that actually works pretty well. But with Facebook, there are people who don't have Facebook accounts, and they then can't watch the Facebook Live thing. And the thing about YouTube is that everybody can just click on a YouTube link and boom, there it is. And the chat function seems pretty good. So. And I think that the audio side of it is a little better as well, but nevertheless, we are actually in the middle of changing our internet service provider, because
I do want to add something just to what you're saying. When I said I was doing my little test period of like when things started, I was watching sound and audio quality on Facebook, sound and audio quality on YouTube, and realized because so many people were on, everything was throttling. And that's the reason I went to Stage It, because I was like, no matter what you do, you can't change that. And although the picture quality can be good to very good on Stage It, the audio quality is always really good. And like, I'm that person that I'm like, I want it to sound as good as possible. If the thing doesn't look, if it says 8 out of 10 rather than 10 out of 10, that's fine, as long as it sounds amazing, because that's the big thing. But I was just saying the throttling thing was the thing that bothered me, and I totally get the fundraising thing. Like that makes complete sense. You should be on a public platform.
Different things.
No, they're different things, but also like, I mean, I'm going to keep this brief and try and not sound like bitter. But like, I've always found that like one of the problems with the internet anyway is that it makes everybody into an instant expert, and like that now everyone is an instant expert on streaming and sound and equipment and all the rest of it, and it's just like,
well, we made the mistake, I think. We said at the beginning, let us know how it's sounding, guys, any feedback. So now God love it, I mean, lots of people are like, guys, shut up and enjoy the music, which is now where we are. But people were very forthcoming, bless them, with their with their opinions. Quite a lot of the time it's like, that's not our end, that's going on at your end.
I mean,
but people are they're helping, they're trying to help, but it just at a certain point you're like, well, there is
it has been comforting to when we've tuned in for other people's live streams to see that they also get a torrent of comments about the sound, video quality, blah 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 blah.
Right.
Like, well, it's not just us.
Well, we saw one on a pre-recorded set that someone had done the other day.
And it was like, what are you gonna
at
do?
a certain point you can't win.
But that does raise a point for me, which is a few people who've been watching my streams have been saying, like, I hope you're recording these for release and all this kind of thing, and I'm not, because to me personally, these are shows. Do you know what I mean? And you don't get to walk away from a show with a recording of a show. And like, and I know it's not exactly the same, but like sometimes at the show, a tall person stands in front of you, or the PA isn't perfect, or whatever, and it's like there are issues with it, and like for me, like I don't want these to be like sort of recordings. Do you know what I mean? They're not like supposed to be permanent things. They are streams. They happen once. If you're there, that's awesome. If they're not, tune in next week or come to tour when we tour again. But the recorded side of what I do already exists. So if you want recordings, go there, you know, but it's not like I'm trying to make a live album every week. You know what I mean? It's a different event.
Hey, Frank, let me ask you a question. Can I ask you a question real quick? Are you and Katie and Jess, have you guys thought about doing any simulcasting where you're doing 2 or 3 different platforms at the same time? Have you dove into any of that?
I've looked into. Oh, go for. Sorry, Frank. Go ahead.
Please go.
You first.
I read up on it a little bit, and it seemed quite technical, and then I kind of went, I'll just do the YouTube one.
Well, and
Right.
kind of there were definitely times where that would be useful, but in the same spirit, it's like, well, this show is happening in this location, and that's what you get on the internet is just picking a provider.
Right.
This is a YouTube show.
Yeah, I do find
bit like we're in Glasgow tonight.
In terms of advertising the shows, I find it very helpful to have one link. You know what I mean? It's just like because people will get confused otherwise. And even on the week when we switched from Facebook to YouTube, I think a lot of people were sat on my Facebook page pressing refresh.
Well,
going,
I was sat on the Facebook page.
You were saying, Katie?
Yeah. Oh, good sir. I know it's funny that the English and the Australians were all apologetic. You first. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry too. But I looked into like Restream, and I think there's another one, Be Live, and you can also do one if you own a pro Zoom account. You can link to Zoom via YouTube and then connect YouTube to Facebook, and you can basically, there are ways to sort of navigate around to stream everything at the one place. And I've watched friends do ones through Restream where you can see all the comments actually merge so that you can see where someone's commenting from Facebook or from YouTube, blah, blah, blah. So you can sort of dive into that. But like what Frank said, I just started to think, well, then I'm like, well, where do I tell people it's at? And I still had that thing of, am I still going to be dealing with the sound audio thing that is my primary concern? I always want things to be as high quality as possible, and then the next step is, like what Frank said too, I don't want these things to be permanent. They should be moments of a concept moment. Like if you want to take screenshots, which people do, and I always share, like people always tag me in all their things or their clips that they've been filming their computer watching it, and it sounds terrible because it's like playing something over the phone via a phone to somebody. It just sounds like a dial-up modem. But there are ways to navigate around and make things simple so that all things come, through one platform and goes out to various. There are ways of doing it, but I didn't feel like it was my avenue to do it, but it exists.
So did you guys, any of you employ some private streams to your friends to say, how is this sounding on this platform, and make adjustments, or did you just do it all?
I discovered that there was a way of doing that after I'd already done like a sound check that went out live publicly on my actual page. I set up the camera and
Nice.
the first week.
It was on your private page, but there wasn't like.
There was definitely one week where it went live on the public thing, and I just sort of sat down and went, "This is a sound check. YouTube, chill out. It's a sound check."
I get a glimpse of him downstairs and me upstairs going, "Sounds fine, hon. Yeah, no, it's fine. It's cool."
Yeah,
it's really professional.
And then like delete the video immediately afterwards, and there's all these comments coming up being like, "What is this?" And then you just sort of pretend it never happened. And then we discovered the whole thing of you can list YouTube videos as private or unlisted or whatever, and that's that problem solved.
I already knew that. I just assumed you had done that, but
Nice, very nice. How about Katie or Tom? Did you guys try anything with friends privately first, or?
No, I did a sound check to myself.
Okay.
I set up a sound check for myself on Stage It, and because there's a little bit of a lag, I could use the microphone, da 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 da, and then look at my phone and go, oh yeah, that's pretty good. And then, so it was a little like The Shining. It was a little insanity driven, but it worked. It worked for me, and I adjusted. I did actually do my first sound check through YouTube, and worked out. It was doing that thing I was talking about. It was throttling quality, and I was like, this sounds terrible. And that's when I immediately moved to stage it and sound checked with myself and gave myself a pat on the back. I'm like, good job.
Well, I definitely called all my audio engineer buddies here in Nashville, Tennessee. I think I recorded it 3 or 4 times, and I sent it out to them, and I said, all right, because you're mixing also for, tiny speakers on your phone and your iPad, and you're not getting that bass response, so I think there is a different approach. At least for me, I found a little bit different approach to, a Facebook Live broadcast would definitely be different than if you were at a 5,000 seat venue or something on a big stage or whatever. Yeah. But yeah, I do think it's a different approach. Are you guys experiencing any of that, or noticing that you might be mixing a little bit differently due to the size of the speakers?
Well, yeah, I mean, because I'm just playing me and the guitar and Jess as well. It's kind of is what it is. I think. Don't have any DIs or anything. Right. One of the things that so we have a friend who lives locally in London, where you do that thing where you just plan to accidentally walk past each other's house every now and again when you're on your one. Yeah. So one of our local friends is an audio engineer for a radio station here in the UK. So this is his kind of thing, and his suggestion was to kind of essentially to pre-record and to stream the pre-record as if it was live. And obviously if you do that, you can spend more time kind of finessing the audio, and in theory the quality should be much better because it's a video that already exists that gets uploaded to a server that then goes into people's lives, and that should be better. But like the problem with that is that like it seems to me that as sats as it is, the sense of it being live and it being a moment of gathering between the people in the comment section, and then knowing that you are sitting there right now doing it, is one of the strengths of this and one of the things that people enjoy in this whole process. And it seems,
especially for whatever reason for us, because of this community and because I've always been interacting as well.
Yeah, I think
if absolutely fraudulent.
Yeah, it would just feel a bit kind of like we were cheating, and
we would be cheating.
We would.
People like the immediate interaction.
Some people might call that research.
Yeah. People are very alone at the moment. So what's wonderful about this, as much as the music is obviously the focus, but a lot of it, at the beginning of the streams that we do, people will come in and be like, hello from Germany, hi, we're here from Nashville, or hi, we're here from Mauritius, or like all over the world.
We're in Australia and it's some god-awful time of day.
And then we can say, guys, we've got people from Mauritius, wow, that's amazing, hi. And that interaction makes people feel a bit less alone, and that's as important, I think, to me.
That's kind of part of the point of what we're all doing,
So we haven't gone down that road.
Yeah.
Have you guys set up a way that the comments thing is kind of interesting to me, because as I watch these streams, you notice the artist playing and then they lean in to read the comments. Have you come up with a way to put the comments on another screen or something so they're easier to see? Or for me, I'm blind.
We've
so
got we're cheating. We just swap when Frank does the comments and when he's
I also feel like the idea of me trying to pay attention to all the comments when I'm playing would be ridiculous, because it'd be like trying to listen into the whole crowd.
Even if that's your full focus, I miss half of them. It's
when you're on a stage, you don't listen to what everyone in the crowd is saying, because that would drive you insane, and it just doesn't really work like that. So
you're not supposed to know what everyone thinks all the time.
Good point. Very good point.
So everyone just holding up little signs saying
good, bad.
Yeah.
So the ones with the brightest, most bold signs get through, right?
Yeah. You do get people that repeat comment the same thing over and over and over again, but we just tell them to stop trolling normally on
Nice.
Everyone else will tell them to stop trolling, which is quite nice.
So if you're taking requests and things, Tom, I think you said you were taking some requests before. How do you filter through those? Have you got someone in the background doing it for you?
No, I don't. I kind of do. I've got another TV screen up here in the studio, and I kind of aircast it to that, through another iPad. and which is nice because then I'm not having to lean in. It's on a lot bigger screen. I can see it from where I'm sitting, and it's not very far. It's probably 12 feet or something. But what I've been doing and what's been interesting to me is, I know a lot of times we talk about, as artists, we talk about building your digital real estate, meaning if you have a mailing list or something like that. I've had a lot of people contact me through that over these last few weeks, and that's really where they make most of their requests. And that also gives me an opportunity to kind of have more of a interaction and conversation with them and to respond. So that's kind of what's been working for me. But largely, that's where I'm getting any of the requests. I do have sometimes on the Facebook Live feed, but just like Frank was saying, I can't see them all. When I'm doing my song, I want to focus on doing the best performance I can do, and giving them everybody having the best experience they can. Now, I may play 2 or 3 songs, and that's usually when I take a break, and I might say hi to the people that are coming across the screen at the time. But other than that, I really just try to focus on, like I said, I think it's a great way to also, I can't wait to get back out on the road. I know I'm probably not the only one. I'm sure I share that sentiment with everyone on this panel, because the practice I'm getting is fantastic. And it's going to be a lot of fun, and when you get it back out there on that stage and you can feel that energy from people again, I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be awesome to see what happens to music and to songwriting and producing records and all that kind of stuff, because I think it's going to be very, very formidable. And I think people are going to be very excited about that again.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point in the sense that, like, not by design by anyone in particular, but what this whole thing has done is really isolate and specify what it is that is different about a regular live show, which is about the exchange of energy with an audience, and about reading the room, and about the very first few live streams I did, I found quite weird in places, because I realized there were quite a few moments in my songs where I just sort of like pause for a second for a cheer, or get a clap going, or whatever it might be, or just kind of like, you sing it kind of thing. And then like and my cat,
I still do that, but I still do that in my stream because I still want to feel somewhat normal.
Sure. But
and applause on one of his, didn't he? Which was genuinely hilarious.
He had a laptop with a like a stadium applause, like
like a laugh track.
That was pretty good. Yeah. But I do think it's really kind of highlighted what is different about an actual show and what's special about an actual show, and that then leads on to the whole thing. And I know this isn't quite in our remit today, but like there's been all these kind of like stopgap measures that people are looking into, whether it's kind of socially distanced seating at shows or like drive-in shows. I've got some friends who've done some of those, and I don't want to be down on any of this for anybody, but I think it's all nonsense personally, because the inescapable thing is the thing that a regular show offers is a sense of gathering and of being stuffed in a room with a bunch of people, and grabbing the person next to you and singing along, and that's the magic right there. And if you can't, if people I saw some photos of a socially distant show the other day, and it was awful. It was like these like.
It might be better than no show at all, which is.
I'm not sure it is though, because it just sort of highlights what it is missing. There was a photo of like a seated auditorium for 1,000 people with like 200 people in like isolated little cantons with like safety tape around them and everything, and it was like, that's not a gig. That's not what you want. That's not what you miss. And so as and when we are allowed to do, in quotes, normal shows again, I think that it's going to be joyous. I don't know when it's going to be, but I think that it's really shown a lot of people, not least myself, what it is special about live performance in and of itself. It's not just sitting down playing a song to yourself. It's playing a song to a room.
Katie, you got to be looking forward to that, aren't you?
Pardon?
You've got to be looking forward to that, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, with all the touring that you've done.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I don't know when. I mean, like all of us, nobody knows when this is going to be a possibility again. Like when this first lockdown happened, everyone started rescheduling shows for the fall, which is, September, October. And I was again like looking at people rescheduling stuff going, how do you know?
Yeah.
Like, you know, the optimism, like how do you know? I'm not a pessimist by, you know, nature, but like that seems like you're a bit soon to be even thinking about things. And I think, you know, shows are going to start again next year, and maybe some smaller shows will happen, you know, in controlled settings a little bit with that distance taken into effect. But I don't think until we've got an actual vaccine for this pandemic, it's just not. I don't understand how you can get past that liability factor for the venues and for the touring companies and all that stuff. There's just too much risk involved there on their behalves. And I'm looking forward to it like anybody else. Like I love a crowd, and I do love the online aspect that you're still getting this feedback from people, and like I can see comments as they're coming in, and you can see all the clap emojis, but the silence, the like after the song finishes, and it's like, thank you. That's the thing that's kind of the. I still say thank you after the song, and or make noises like I'm an idiot when I do my live streams because I'm always commenting, and I might stop in the middle of the song and say something because I'm thinking about it or what, you know. It's just that's just where I'm at. But like I try and keep it as this dialogue with people, even though they're not. You know, they are responding, but like I can't hear them, and I think that's the silence is the thing that is the only factor. Like if there was a slight crowd noise with live streams and you could hear as people said something, like even if it's just like the play this one, you know, it would feel more normal, but it would also be, you know, terrible and distracting, and that's a horrible idea, and please nobody ever invent that. But if the silence is the thing to overcome. But once we get back into it, like I really can't wait. Like watching all of the shows that I had this year cancel and all the festivals and, you know, the CMA Fest and the, you know, the big stadium tour and all that stuff. And I was just like, okay, this is big, this is real, this is heavy, but this is something everyone is experiencing. And the, you know, it's the entertainers, obviously, we're the ones that luckily people have turned to, you know, the creative people, I should say, that people have turned to during this crisis. And people are, you know, listening to shows and they're watching, you know, DIY projects, and they're, you know, cutting their own hair and, you know, making a mess out of their lives, but they're trying new things. And it's also up to us. We're now trying new things because of this situation, and hopefully we'll come out of it better.
Yeah. I would say,
Katie, you have to be. Oh, sorry. I was going to say, be careful what you wish for. Someone's going to come up with the free bird emoji. And you're going to get that.
And then I'll go, blocked.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right.
Sorry, Frank.
Block someone with a button.
Yeah.
It's not that we've ever had
Yeah,
to.
imagine if you could block real people at a show and just point at them and go.
Right. The mute button.
Sorry about that, Frank. I think I stepped on you. Sorry about that.
One of the things I've been pleasantly surprised by in this, and this goes back to something Kate was saying at the beginning, is like, I feel like most civilians, regular people who aren't professional entertainers, whatever you want to say, like kind of grasped the severity and weirdness of the situation for us quite quickly in a way that was quite nice. Like, by which I mean, like, I sort of remember when streaming sort of became a bit of a thing and the income from record sales came off, sort of collapsed. A lot of like normal people, like punters, whatever, took quite a while to sort of understand that was changed the economics of what we do quite radically and all the rest of it. Whereas now with this lockdown, right from the word go, I was sort of cautiously being like, you know, if you've got any money, you could throw it in the pot, you know, and trying to be really like about the whole thing. And then like straight away, people are just like, oh, I get it. You've had your income removed. That's fine. And people have been very generous, I find. In the charity live streams I've done, we did one for ourselves, as it were, because my job ceased to exist. Essentially, and like even with that, like people's generosity was kind of like immediate, and like
you were worried about, you were really apologetic about it, and everyone was just like, dude, we get it, it's fine. Like everybody responded.
Yeah, I was kind of going. I kept being really defensive about asking people. Yeah. It wasn't even necessarily just for straight cash. It was just like, could you buy some merch? Could you buy some records from the online store or whatever? And everybody, you kind of told me to shut up eventually, and we're just like, listen, no one has a problem with this. Just do what you're going to do. And I've been kind of pleasantly surprised by that, by the way that people have kind of recognize that the situation that we're in as professional entertainers in normal life is now financially fraught.
I think in general, one thing about the pandemic is that the collective spirit in fundraising has been extraordinary to watch people gather and help. So we've raised money for a few charities outside that various people that we know or family members run as well. And in general, a lot of people are getting just a massive flux of support, which they need. And it's kind of wonderful to see that most people are like that, and they're like, there is a crisis, how do I help other people? And the live streams for every week are a really sharp reminder of that, and it's really lovely for us. It's a nice thing.
Right. You know, that brings me to a topic that I've heard some quite interesting discussions about, and it's generating revenue from some of these streams. And I've seen people talking about geolocated or geo-blocked streams, so they're only available to do basically an online tour. So if you're in Charlotte, North Carolina, only 100 miles in that radius can come on, and then there's people who are selling limited numbers of tickets. Are any of you guys approaching things that way yet, or looking into that?
Not yet. That seems a little weird to me. Like, it seems a bit kind of like going against. We all have this kind of blitz spirit about the lockdown, and I think that I've seen some people have started doing it, and I'm interested to watch how that plays out, and if this becomes a thing that lasts for a year and a half or whatever, then maybe. But this is where I kind of go to like Katie's approach of being cautious and letting other people kind of trip over those fences first.
Yeah.
It's just a bit like, right. I just sort of feel like, as we were saying, like one of the nice bits is when everybody signs on and goes, you know, like Asheville, North Carolina signing in, and Berlin signing in, and whatever, and that's the really kind of fun bit. And I think if you kind of went, no, not you, do you know what I mean, to some of those people, that would be a bit weird.
I mean, I don't think you set it up and
No,
such a way that you have to do that.
There you go.
It might have a place further down the line.
Yeah, totally. I mean,
I'm
we'll
not
see.
sure.
But
We're certainly
again,
not
that seems to me like an attempt to kind of recreate what shows are about that is going to fail because it's not recreating what a show is. Do you know what I mean? I don't know, mate. I might be wrong about that.
What about you guys?
Well, the only thing I've done that's closest to that is just set up 2 different shows at 2 different time zones, because now, you know, Central European time is switched forward, and then Australia went back an hour, and then Australia went forward. Like all of a sudden, like that magic number of when I can perform just got totally thrown away. So I was like, I have to do 2 shows now, one for Europe and one for Australia and US.
I did.
Well, not Australia, but Oceania, whatever you call it.
I did an Australian time zone show a few weeks ago because I was supposed to be on tour in Australia in April, and obviously that all got cancelled. So I did a show that was at like 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. UK time, so that it would be evening for Australia, or whatever the maths were. And it was kind of interesting because there was just tons of English people saying, having my lunch.
There was still quite a lot of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very nice. Andy, I'm going to pass to you. I think there's a couple questions coming in here.
There is. I guess one thing that I wonder though is now once sort of lockdown gets relaxed a little bit, have any of you got plans to do a full band live stream where you can get into a practice room or a rehearsal space and just sort of pad it out a bit? So I mean, it's a bit more interactive than, like you said, you finish the song and there's nothing kind of there. Do you need some buddies to kind of, any plans to do that?
My production team, my regular touring production team, have been busying themselves building a setup that will allow us to do that at our rehearsal space, as and when. And a couple of weeks ago, there was a change in the restrictions in the UK, and we were all kind of like, they're going to announce it, and then we're going to do it like tomorrow. And then the change in the regulations wasn't quite enough of a change to justify us doing that. It is there for us to do. I mean, and I probably will, if nothing else, just to make it different for me and by extension the audience as well. But it's not going to be. It'll be different, but like it's not going to be like a huge difference, I don't think.
How about yourself, Tom or Katie?
Well, I think for me that just what Frank was saying, it would bring a really nice element to an already existing show that you're doing, and I think for us as artists, I think it keeps it fresh. I think it keeps it fresh for the people that are tuning in to watch. And I mean, I miss sitting around picking with my buddies and you know, because that's the camaraderie. That's a big part of being on the road. You know, you've kind of you get adopted or you adopt people into your family, you know, if you will. And and if you get along with them, you end up spending, years, and you just become extended family. So I think that's an element that will be, it'll be kind of I don't know if I want to say a selfish thing. Might be a little selfish on my part, just because I want to hang out with those guys and create more tunes and perform more music. And, that's who we are. It's not what we do, it's who we are. And that's a big difference to me. But yeah, and then there's the other aspect of, do you want to do the full band? Do you want to kind of do, a cajon player and a bass player and, just kind of different flavors? That's what I love about music. It's the only language I know. I call it the universal language. It's the only one we can all speak and agree on.
Yeah.
For me,
Totally.
I think I would only consider maybe 1 or 2 acoustic players to add to an additional stream, just because, again, you are then looking at further sound issues when you're involving more people. And acoustic is so simple, and it's natural. It's like, for me, I just use one USB mic and strategically place it in an area where it's going to pick up vocal the right way, guitar the right way. Done. If I'm adding one more person to the equation, that's also an easy fix. It's just placing them in the room so that then that makes sense. If you're adding more players into the element, you're then looking at trying to fit everyone into a space where the camera gives you, then looking at the visual aspect where everyone can fit, where the camera makes sense, then making the sound work. And then for me, I'm looking at then paying players. Even though people are friends, I never expect people to do something for nothing. So I'm looking at paying players then. I just think it complicates the situation a little bit more than it should be. And if you are going to do a situation where you want to involve band members, I've seen some excellent videos of people doing like quarantine editions of videos where everyone records remotely. That is a better way to control the sound issue while still doing things, like, it makes things complicated still, but trying to do things live with multiple people, I think you're kind of asking for trouble. And you kind of then, doing these streams as it is, it's a different approach to a live performance. If you're then adding multiple players into it, you're going to somewhat, lack of a better term, bastardize the sound. And then it takes away from that personal sort of aspect, because then again, you're further away from the camera. You probably can't read comments. I just think it's too much to think about. I just want to keep things simple, where I can connect and it makes sense. I can have still keep this rapport with this audience, and make this an exciting experience for them, making this something they still want to tune into every week or every performance that you do, rather than giving them something where they're like, it wasn't great.
I'm just wondering if we maybe, and again, this is just my opinion, but maybe we could see where bands and crews do go back to work. So the sound engineer's sort of just mixing down to, instead of a PA, he's mixing down to an interface. Yeah. And the backline can come in and set the backline up. But I guess it would have to be monetized in that sense, to pay all those people to take those roles on, and the musicians, the hired hands, or anything like that as well.
Yeah, that is the structure that my guys have been looking at, is having like our live sound engineer mixing down to a sort of 2-channel feed, and then we've got like we've got a guy who's got like a vision mixer, so we'll have like 5 cameras, which solves some of the problems. But I completely take everything that you're saying, Kate, and that is a big part of my reservation about it, is that I'm just not. It's going to be very hard to get quality and intimacy within
at the same time.
I think,
and it's only possible because you happen to have the rehearsal space,
the
sort of bunker that
I think we'll probably give it a try, as in setting YouTube to private, in the way that I've now learned that you can do. But how much will actually, I don't know, we'll see. But and also, as you're saying, paying people is a big part of it as well, in the sense that, like, if I gather my full touring crew together, aside from the whole thing of social distancing, of us all still trying to stay 2 meters away from each other, which will be weird, that's a lot of people that need to get paid, and they should be paid for working, so that's another angle on it that's complicated.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I'm just going to go back to something that you said, Tom, earlier, that by streaming, you found a different way of songwriting and a different inspiration to that. Can you tell us a little bit more of that? And Frank and Jess and Katie, have you found a similar things? It changed the way you write or think about songs or anything like that?
Well, I think like this is kind of nuts. I mean, when you're at a show and you're doing like a meet and greet line, or you're doing a fan club party, or something like that, it's kind of a controlled. Again, it's kind of a controlled environment, and you might only get to talk to 100 people that night, or whatever. Well, when you're doing these streams, even after you're done, you can go back and read all the comments and spend a little time doing that. And I think for the songwriting aspect for me is I'm seeing a lot more of a commonality with how people are feeling. And I think if we pay attention as writers, we're going to be able to become like better messengers and artists for that. There's a lot of people I know, and they're some people haven't really dealt with this whole thing very well, and they're lonely. And some people have been fine, and some people, I think the one common thing I'm seeing is I'm seeing hope kind of build. And I think going back, and I don't know if you guys have seen this on Facebook, but I have seen like 150 different posts for We Are the World, things like that. I think people are ready for that again. I think they're ready to, get behind something, believe in something. And maybe that's why, like Frank was talking about with the streaming and the monetization or the tips or whatever, or the fundraising. And maybe that's why it isn't a problem. Because I think it's incredible at the generosity of folks right now. And it's blown me away because I struggled with that. I struggled with maybe not, everybody's like, oh, you got to put up a tip jar and this and that. I kind of struggled with that because I go, well, if I'm having a hard time, I'm sure other people are having a hard time too. And I don't want to be that guy. And so, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting though, and something that Katie touched on before is it's the first place you turn to is the arts, isn't it, in something like this? But it seems to be the last place that's been supported. So I don't think there's anything wrong with sticking a tip jar up personally, or sort of asking for that.
No,
I think people totally get that.
I did do that.
Yeah,
I did do that, and it was amazing to me. Like I said, I just couldn't believe it. And, you start thinking about it, and like I said, music is that universal language. But, man, if we can do stuff that touches people, even in their house, and make their day, give them a break for a half hour, 20 minutes, an hour, however long your show is, I think that's what we were kind of designed for anyway.
Yeah. That's good. That comes back to it. One of the questions that we've had in, which is you've kind of answered there yourself, Tom, but what's the most inspiring thing that you've found during this streaming phase, if you like? So I'll throw that to either Katie or Jess or Frank.
I don't know if I've seen anything in particular. There's so much. Thank you, good sir. Yes. I don't know. Honestly, I think the fact that people are gathering together and giving up their time or their funds to support other people in need, that's the general consensus of inspiration that I've seen. I don't think I've seen one thing in particular, and a lot of people are adopting like shelter pets that normally wouldn't, because they're or fostering shelter pets because that's something they can do while they're home, and they're not, they can take care of something. I haven't seen one particular thing that's been extremely moving, just lots and lots of little things. I think aside from the hope and inspiration, there's an equal amount of heavy depression and feeling lost and feeling completely, not worthless, but when you don't have a job and you're not working, it's hard to feel a sense of purpose. And like for us, we get to do this, like I'll do like my one stream and then I'll be like, I did a thing, yay. But there's a lot of people at home that are completely unemployed and don't have anything. And so it, like, whatever those little things are, like those little things add up to a big thing in the sense of things. I don't know, Frank and Jess, have you seen any big things?
I mean,
Yes, I can think of a few examples of people I know responding incredibly well. Of course, we're lucky. Everyone knows some extraordinary people. I have some friends whose father is very, very sick. He was on a ventilator for 3 weeks, and their response was to start a charity to get recorded audiobooks into hospitals for recovering COVID patients. So
Great.
Because people still need entertaining, these people are isolated, they're very sick, and they're alone, and they need something to do, and this isn't something do. And I thought that was really incredible. I think in general, I suppose that's what I mean, the arts, people are using the arts in incredible ways at the moment, which is fantastic. But I also have a lot of friends, actors, specifically theatre actors. That's not a thing you can do on Zoom, really. Nobody needs to see endless Shakespeare monologues to camera. We just don't need that in the world. It's not quite. And there are some formats, but so they're really stuck. So it's sort of swings and roundabouts. There's some things that you go, wow, that's amazing, but the honest reality is that there's a lot of really dark stuff going on too. So you need the amazing, you need to focus on it.
I think, as I was saying earlier, I feel like a lot of people I know's instinct has been, how do I help? And that's been that's a broad statement, but that's been kind of wonderful. A thing that I wanted to go back to, though, about what Tom was saying, though, so as a writer, that I've got this theory that in about a year's time, maybe a bit less, there's going to be this absolute glut of songs about lockdown, and I'm a little bit sort of.
I think we should only be allowed one each.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I'm as guilty as anybody else. I've written more than one lockdown song in my time, but the problem with it is that I suspect that there's going to be one really good one. Do you know what I mean? It'll be the
lockdown song.
The lockdown song, and then there's going to be this absolute car crash of less good lockdown songs, which again I'm counting my own material as being. At the same time, it's I don't think that what we're living through is equivalent to the war or whatever, but people wrote songs about that when it happened because it was this huge event that affected everybody in the whole world. So of course it's going to figure in your writing as a writer, but it's just I'm at a point now where I'm sort of, at the beginning of lockdown, I was like, well, at least this could be a really focused period for writing because there's no distractions, which discounted the fact that there is one enormous distraction, which is the global pandemic, and and I went through a period where I found it really hard to write about anything else, but I was trying not to just write about that. And that was quite a conflict for me as a writer. I've now got to a place where I can kind of squeeze around the side of it enough to write about other things when I need to, but that's a bit of a dilemma for me. It's the thing on my mind all the time. It's the thing on everybody's mind all the time. It's affecting everybody. Of course, you're going to write a song about it, but then at the same time, is 2021 going to be the year in which every single bloody album released has 8 songs about being in lockdown on it?
Well, maybe, Frank, we should all 4 write that one song together. What do you think, brother? Because if it's the big one, what?
I said, I've got the title. It's called Don't Breathe on Me.
Okay.
Perfect.
But I totally agree with that songwriting thing of that that's I always call it a low-grade anxiety.
Yeah.
That you feel every day. So when you go in to write songs and you sit down, you're it's kind of like that white noise that just won't clear when you're trying to write something honest and true, and it's still just kind of there buzzing away in your mind, and it's hard to sort of separate from that. But I think that there's going to be a lot of songs of inspiration coming out. There's going to be a lot of dark things too, but there's going to be the balance of that's going to come out too.
Yeah, the only time I've been able to write so far is when I've convinced myself actively that I'm choosing to be at home and that it's a holiday. I'm on holiday.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
You're going to be well rested.
Feel like that.
You have to work quite hard at that, and then you can and then I've been able to relax enough to write, but that hasn't happened very often.
Right.
Nice. It'll be interesting to see just in general if some of the leading things that we see come out are more geared towards a stripped down production values.
Yeah.
So if we stay in this type of environment, people can continue doing the type of things that we've been talking about all day. I'm really curious to see if productions change over the next 6 or 8 months.
Well, I know that all those movies have been delayed and released too, just because they can't promote them. All those big production Hollywood movies have all been delayed. obviously the rise of independent film will probably come forward as a result, because you may just need one cameraman and one actor at a time to get, as long as you've got an incredible dialogue, you've got something really engaging to watch. But it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I've been
Yeah.
upgrading my home studio here, and I've been doing a couple of online courses on like music production and mixing and stuff like that, partly because it's something to do, but also because, like, you know, if it were to reach a point where I was able to record a kind of release quality studio album at home, that would be an interesting development, you know, in terms of how the world might be in the future. But at the same time, like, I'm supposed to be in the studio in August and September in LA this year, which I don't think is going to happen, but we'll see. But nevertheless, like, the idea of being, and it's not the same as a show, but the idea of being in a room with a producer and like the guys in my band is like, please, please.
Imagine.
Yeah.
You know what? I think that I think it's going to be a really interesting time. But I do think that us as musicians and songwriters and singers, I think we're going to persevere regardless. I think historically we always have, and I'm pretty grateful for that part of it. You know, just for me, that's what music does for me. It keeps me kind of going, and kind of like what Katie was talking about. You know, there's going to be some of that dark stuff, but there's also going to be a lot of hope. And you know, I think even though we're doing this streaming stuff, there's still a bit of, you know, we're still getting a bit of that personalization with folks. It's a different venue by far, but you're still getting that connection, you know?
Yeah. I think one of the things I find interesting and potentially exciting is I think that there will be a period of time where the music industry is really kind of like anarchic in a way that I'm quite attracted to, in the sense that, and I think that's already true of the streaming thing. None of us are doing our streams through our booking agents. Do you know what I mean?
Right. Right.
Promoters, where it's very, very direct. And I had this kind of image in my head of London, which is where we live, obviously, but like almost being a bit like East Berlin in 1990 for a minute or two, where it's just kind of like, right, there's a bar, there's a stage, stand on a beer crate and play a few songs. And like the whole thing will just be really kind of like out of control in a way that, as somebody who grew up with punk rock music, makes me kind of excited, you know, and I think it will probably settle down after a time, and for good reasons. But I'm interested in that moment in time when I think things will be quite kind of seat of the pants in a way that could be quite exciting, and will really highlight the pure essential core of what it is you do as an entertainer, as a song, you know, like say standing on a table in a bar and playing songs with no mics and no PA, and just like, can you engage a room? I think there's a good discipline to that, which I'm kind of excited about.
I think you're going to see a lot of that in certain areas too, where some people are hesitant to move. Some people are going to see it as an opportunity, and they're going to try some things, and it may set new standards.
Yeah.
Totally. So there's just a couple more questions because we're almost out of time. That's flown by. But I guess because we're just going back to the streams, have any of you come up with any creative decor? I know Katie's got a great backdrop there. That looks fantastic. But have you kind of started moving ornaments around? I mean, I'm in my garage, which is where I work, because it's the only place I can get any peace from the madness inside. But have you come up with any creative kind of, decor or way that you've positioned things?
I mean, Frank didn't even want to tidy up the first time I had to.
Leave it.
The first time we had a backdrop, because one of the Vanessa, who was on the tour with us that we cancelled, she's an artist, and she makes these beautiful big lace, or she made one particular beautiful big lace piece which we hung as a backdrop. But otherwise, the only special feature that people like of ours is the cat. We have a cat, and people get very excited when they get to the cat.
I wouldn't refer to her as decor.
She's not really decorative, no. But she's the one thing that we occasionally artificially bring into frame.
Well played.
She doesn't like it.
She doesn't like it at all, no, especially when he's singing loud songs. But...
Yeah, actually, that's the thing. Our cat has discovered what we do for a living since lockdown started. She's like, you know, because I sing pretty loudly when I sing, and the first time I was playing downstairs, she sort of stuck her head around the door and was like, "What is this?" And then ran away.
Brilliant. Katie, I see your backdrop looks great, though.
I've had this backdrop for years though. I mean, ever since I started doing sort of YouTube videos, I've always worked out where is a blank area, and then I realized the easiest thing is just to have a backdrop. And the rule of thumb for filming anything is face the light, and usually you can't always face the light or the light of the day or the sun, so it's like I bought a backdrop and lights really cheap a long time ago, and bought a good sort of camera stand for my iPhone a while ago too, and bought a better one like maybe a year ago. And just, I mean, I've had most of my tools of the trade I've had for a while. They're just getting used, and I just have like a disaster corner just off camera view where like everything's kind of shoved at the moment. Yeah. There's like a light, a stand, and then another thing, and like the space stand for my condenser. All this stuff is just strategically not in view right now. But yeah, I think you got to have a set amount of tools to be able to function and do multiple things. And I've always tried to do as many live shows as I have done, producing online content for YouTube. So I just have this stuff.
Yeah, I'm very much of your school, Katie, in that because I'm an actor, have been an actor for 10 years, so the light is really important to me. But Frank, because he's a punk, is like, I don't care at all.
My hair doesn't usually look like
this.
It's
not normally this colour.
I got bored.
So we haven't really, to begin with, I brought lights down and tried to set them up, and then slowly over time he's eroded my professionalism, and now we just sit in the lounge.
Wonderful.
Fantastic. How about you, Tom?
Well, I just kind of go off of, I got a little couch. I mean, I don't have it framed today, but if I turn 90 degrees, you're going to see all my stuff. But I've got a lot of guitars on the wall, and that's kind of where I feel safe. Anywhere there's more guitars, I feel better. Of course, right up here, next to that picture, you might see that. That's my good luck Paddington bear. I got to have that in here. You can't. I may grow up, but I don't ever want to grow that much.
Here.
But I set up.
There you go, everybody. There's Tom's setup.
Oh,
there you
fantastic.
Go. Yeah, I put in the
Tom.
neon lights in the background. Jess, you might appreciate that.
Wow, looks great.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I kind of want to feel like I'm still in a bar somewhere. Or I'm sorry, a pub.
Brilliant. And then the last question we have just before we wrap up is, what's the biggest, what new skill have you learnt? I know Frank touched on that he's been learning about production and that kind of thing for streaming. Is it, what have you sort of learnt? What's the biggest tip you could give to someone, I guess, who's looking to start up a live stream themselves?
Probably just start. You got to just start. I mean, I don't mean to be crass or whatever. Like, I've always been that person that you just have to start the thing, and you'll work out. Like, if you have an enormous audience, there's a responsibility to not provide terrible content to your audience. But the only way to sort of work out what works for you or where your audience is just to try. I mean, this is that period of time. It's gonna last longer. Like nobody should be relaxing. I mean, even though you might be able to go out now and lockdowns are easing, this thing is going to go on for a while. Mm-hmm. So this is something, the online sort of platform is something to sort of dive into. So just start, see what works for you, see what doesn't work, see what other people are doing, and just begin.
I think I would say like simplicity would be a strong thing. Just like trying to just keep everything kind of simple and streamed, whether that's kind of like trying to simplify your technical setup, or as we were saying earlier, just having one link or picking one time of the week when you do it, and just sort of like, because people, first of all, in a large group of people, there's always people who are going to get confused, but also like the nature of the internet at the best of times is an avalanche of information coming at people 24 hours a day. And what you want to do is just try and make it easy for people to remember where you're going to be and when you're going to be. You know what I mean? It's like if you do a different time every week or whatever, then people are just going to get weird about it. Whereas if you build something where it's like every week it's going to be this time, and do you know what I mean? Just sort of keeping it streamlined, I think, is important.
I also think that like the same rules apply in some ways to stream shows as to any other kind of show, in that if you're having fun, and they probably are as well, like not fun that they can't as long as they can share in it. But
Yeah,
we had a bit of a disaster when you forgot all the words to one of the songs.
I did.
The other day.
I rehearsed
and it
every
was-
song off this record
really
apart from
forgot
one.
And it just
And
happened to be a song that he'd written for me. So I was sat off screen going, this is the song. This is the next song. And actually,
Uh-oh.
kind of, it was people's favourite bit. It was because they thought it was funny. And as long as you're having a lovely time, probably other people will enjoy it too. So don't work yourself. It's not a recording, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So there's someone that's done a lot of filming. When the camera is on you, sometimes you can feel really self-conscious and like, I've got to get it right now because the camera's on. It's not filming. And try and remember that it's an interaction, and that will keep you calm, I suppose.
In my disaster corner is also my music stand that has the lyrics, and I strategically place my microphone so that I'm actually performing 90% of the time just off camera, so that it creates a view where I can look back at the screen when I want, but I'm reading a lot of lyrics because especially when I'm dealing with all these requests, I don't know.
Some of my touring crew noticed a few weeks in that there are certain songs where I'm just kind of looking off camera, sort of down quite a lot, and it's like, you've got the lyrics on the floor, haven't you? It's like, no, I don't want to talk about it.
But again, people like, because it's getting into somebody's home and world, they like the honesty about it. I think they generally do. So that would be awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you. Tom, any top tips for anyone starting?
Yeah, I tell you what, for me, I think it's, there's so much stuff to learn when you start doing this kind of stuff. I agree with Katie. You got to just go for it at some point. I know, and that's what was told to me. But also, I like to do my research. But I think, what I think the biggest tip is patience. I think you got to have patience when you're doing this stuff. It can seem really overwhelming at first if you've never done anything like this. I know it was for me. And if you just not be too hard on yourself in the process, I think you're going to have a much better result. I think, and I agree with Frank and Jess, and being consistent. So maybe patience and perseverance and persistence. Those are the 3 P's for me. But I think that'll make it a lot easier. And then I think you also create that the hope is that you create that show that people can count on, especially like right now. I mean, it's always better if, I think it's always better if you have a few things in life that you know are good, and that you can count on. That kind of helps you get through the week and all. But I think that was the biggest thing for me is, because I love to learn. I love to learn about all this new stuff and use this new technology. And but it's real easy to get overwhelmed and kind of start beating up on yourself, and that's not what you want to do. You just want to take things step by step, and reach out and ask a lot of people, ask a lot of questions. There's no stupid questions in any of this stuff, because I don't think any of us have all the answers.
Totally. That's fantastic advice. I'm just going to pass back to Tim now to close, but I just want to say personally, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great. Really appreciate it.
Thank you
so much. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you guys for joining us. Yeah, all 4 of you. We really do appreciate it. Andy, thanks for helping out here, and the Sound Academy team, and especially to our audience for joining us and watching today. We'll have this video posted in a few weeks with the rest of these panels. So if you want to go back and catch it again, we'll be emailing the link out. But we really appreciate everyone joining us, and don't miss the rest of the Sound Academy efforts with educational things for mixing, mic placement, RF, anything you can think of at Sennheiser.com/webinars. And we hope to see you again next week. Next week we'll have there'll be a first stab at having a whole crew from one artist. It'll be the Blake Sheldon team. So that should be quite fun. So we look forward to talking to you all soon. And thank you very much. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. See you.
Thanks, guys.